Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, as usual, I'm going to put the question out there and I'm going to pass the mic on to somebody else to share their views. So I'm going to start today with Kaisal.
Okay, what was the question? Do we fear Allah or not? Should we fear Allah or do we fear Allah? So we say we have a vote. Who fears Allah? Put your hand up. Who doesn't?
What does it mean?
What does it mean? Okay. You know, this is a topic that I probably always touch every single year. Guess what time of the year? Ramadan. Right? And last Ramadan, I gave a series of lectures, and one of them was on this topic. And the kids that I was talking with that time, I asked them what they thought fear was, and whether they feared Allah or not. It was a fascinating discussion. And 6 of them were honest enough to say, we don't fear Allah. And I asked them why. And they said, because He's something that we speak of, but we've never seen, we can't relate to, so how can we fear something we've never seen? Right? And so then it led to what fear is. And
let's leave it there, because that's an interesting contention. Scoop.
I would ask, how would you know if you actually fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? And you might answer and say, well, if somebody followed the commandments outwardly, and he's somebody who prayed 5 times a day and fasted in Ramadan, etc. But in this country, because there's no there's not a custom of azan goes off in the background. Like, if you go to Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, or whatever, it's a majority Muslim country, or the area you live in, the azan time, you hear the azan, most people will go to the mosque, and so outwardly you see everybody prays. But then there's also some things going on in the background, and there's also a lot of crime being committed and all other things, and it kind of seems like there's a massive contradiction. So there's people who outwardly, they may seem as though they do and they follow the commandments, but the reality is something else. So how would you know?
So there's a duality in the personality of people.
Yeah. So how would I know if I actually feared Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? Just because I pray 5 times a day or follow the commandments, how would I know if I did? Or how would I judge other people if they did or not?
That's one very big bucket. There's various buckets in this topic.
So when we say fear Allah, we're talking about Muslim.
Talking about us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So non-Muslim,
they're excluded from the discussion.
We don't talk about it.
we have to talk about it. So when we say fear Allah, so in Arabic we say taqwa. You know what we're saying? We have taqwa.
There's more than 10 words in the Quran.
Yeah.
Okay, explain that word.
Taqwa, people say God consciousness, God feeling, like we say now. So what's, like you said, what's the manifestation of that? How do we know that somebody God feeling? So we'll just point you out. How do you know?
I still want that definition of what fear is.
Okay.
Because look, when you talk about fear, according to psychologists, there's a fine line between fear and anxiety. When a person has anxiety, mental problems. So how do you relate to this?
So fearing Allah is going to give into fearing other people too. So that's why. And how do you define fear when you're talking about fearing Allah?
Is it a positive thing or a negative thing? Let's start with that.
Of course, ultimately it's a positive thing, isn't it?
Ultimately positive. So that's a good start. Fear is something positive, but we still don't know what it is.
Fear is something positive, or fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But fear can still be positive, because, for instance, if there's a tiger, I'm scared of it. That's positive, because I'm going to jet
But it could also be debilitating. Like if I'm scared in social situations, I might not talk. I'm scared. I'm not confident. Or something.
So is that anxiety?
Yeah. Okay, so that's the fine line.
Yeah. Anyone else? Just keep getting your thoughts out.
I think Scoops made a really good point about in terms of how can you ever really know about yourself. I think about others you'd never know because you don't know what their inner state is. So you'd never be able to know, okay, are they doing such actions because of love of God or fear of God?
Why do you need to know about somebody else?
Why did you ask the question in the first place?
I said, what do we fear Allah?
I said, do you mean we?
I didn't say, do you fear Allah?
Yeah.
Does he fear Allah? I said, do we fear Allah?
No, like, alright, one minute.
So the scope is an
okay,
introspective
so the scope
question.
of it, we, is it,
Yeah.
as in me as an individual and him as an individual, all of us as an individuals, or the whole ummah, or everybody here. So it is about the personal self, isn't it? Right. So my question of how would I know somebody else is mute. So I'm asking me as an individual. Okay.
I guess you'd have to know your own intentions. So, for example, if you're going to do namaz or if you're going to do dhikr or adhkar, any nafi ibadat you're going to do, is it because you're fearing hellfire or you're doing it because, say, you've reached some spiritual station where you are in just awe of God? Because you don't necessarily, I don't know, because you could say, what if someone is in complete awe of God but doesn't necessarily fear them in the sense of the definition of fear as in we're scared of something or an entity? It could be that they're, I don't know, you could define fear in a way of love, I don't know.
Okay, so I'm reminded of that story of Rabia Basri when she kind of made a dua and said, if I worship you out of fear of your hellfire, then throw me in it. And if I worship you out of love of paradise, then prevent me from it. So like your point is a good point, but it's not really about fear because you're talking about something higher where fear wouldn't really come into it, I think. I don't know if people would agree, but...
He's gone off to next level heights.
I think I'll join in the tennis match here. Basically, if you love somebody, the common thing regarding fear, the idea is that you fear to displease them because you love them and you fear to displease them. And according to the little research which I did, the most powerful emotion a human being has is love, and it's not fear. Yeah. Yet we also read that the awliya Allah in the past have told us that you should fly through this life with one wing of fear, one wing of love. The ulama say that, the awliya say that the love should be higher than the fear.
So then how would you define fear?
How do you find fear? Fear would be, it's like, for example, I love my father and I fear to displease him because I love him.
That's a very good point.
I was just thinking, you said fear, like what the Muslim was saying in other countries where azan goes off, and a lot of people, might just go to read namaz because other people are going and azan's gone off and they're looking. So fear would be you do something by yourself as well. When you're on your own, you do the same thing, or you do it in front of people. So is that fear of Allah? Is when you do it by yourself as well in seclusion, what you do in front of people. So
It's one of the results of it. If you truly fear Allah, you would do that. You'd behave in private as you did in public. And with the caveat that what you did in public was good.
I've got one. We all sin. We all make sins. When we were younger, we were doing sins. At the moment, at least I'll speak for myself, we still sin. But it doesn't matter which one, it doesn't matter whatever sin. But for example, I'm committing a particular sin, but if all of a sudden I see that my father is looking at me, I will straight away do anything to stop it. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't want my father to see me commit that particular sin. Why? Because out of respect and fear for my father. So, huh? It's fair, isn't it? But But what about Allah? Do we not believe that He actually sees us? Because we believe that my Father will see me. Therefore, I fear that bit where He sees me. So do we not have the same with Allah?
Yeah, I remember this story from Hadith. I think it was in the time of Sayyidina Umar. There was a young man who he was on his way to Fajr, and some female invited him, and she was really good-looking female. And the young man, he wasn't married, and so she invited him to her house. He started to head towards her house, and fear overtook him. Fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala overtook him, and he had a heart attack just outside of her house, and he passed away on the spot. So that kind of fear, I don't feel it, that type of fear, but that obviously is some type of fear where it manifests even in a physical form, where somebody died from it, so that exists.
Do you want to just the question is, are you asking what is fear? How do we find out one has fear? What is the question again? Can you just...
Do we fear Allah? It's open-ended on purpose to create this discussion. So what I do normally every week, I have an open-ended question because I want people to think, first of all, what's the definition? Then what's the scope? So people have training on how to think things through logically. Who wants to say something next? Assalamu
alaikum. It's an amazing question, actually, quite deep, and I think fear is a beautiful thing. It depends how we all see it. When we say fear, the first thing in our head, if someone says define fear, we think of the word scared. And I think fear is probably a better word than scared. Brother said a beautiful word about the father example. I think fear should be, I see it as love. So when we have the love of Allah, we'd enjoy it. We enjoy praying our salah. Sometimes we just read it fast, we don't think of the words. But if you start thinking of the words and do it in a spiritual way, and maybe do it in a yoga way, thinking of your body, how you pray. And if you start doing that all the time, and then you lose it after a while, and then maybe after weeks, you're thinking, one day you're sitting there and you're reading 2 novels, just asking God for forgiveness, because you've had that fear. You loved Him so much and you felt like you let Him down. And that's what I think the fear and love are 2 very similar things. And I think that's what we shouldn't get mixed up. It's small things. I think small gestures, for example, when I drink water from a tap, I won't fill the tap up. Because what we do is we drink it and then we throw the rest. It's because I have that fear of Allah. Because there's millions and millions and millions of people who can't even get to a tap, can't even get to a river, can't get to a well, close to a well. And then we are just sipping one sip of that glass and throwing the rest. But I think as personally, I think of that. I think, there's no way I cannot throw the rest of that water. And that's where the fear comes, because I love Allah so much. Generally, we're talking about committed sins, like you were just saying, I think I'm probably the biggest gunagar here. But small things, I think if you start thinking of the small things and start building on there, the love starts building and then fear comes. But don't see it as like you said, I don't think it's a negative thing as well. I think it's a very, very positive thing.
Brother touched on a very important point, which is awareness. When you were talking about the yoga thing as you described it, that mindfulness concept, being mindful of what you're doing is very important. These days people are just doing what they're doing, no second thought.
Can I just touch a little bit more on that? I think I'm going slightly away, digressing from the subject, from that salah. And I'll be very quick on this. But when we were praying our Salah, it was a few years ago, I started thinking about Salah. Why do we just read it? Why don't we think about it? And that's when I thought of doing the yoga in our Salah. Then I would start reading upon Salah itself, how spiritual it can be with the body, mind, and the exercise with it. So when I stand up straight and I breathe in. And when I'm praying, it breathes out. Right? And then the whole posture going down. So I see it as an exercise. Sorry, I just thought I'd share that.
You do charity work, yeah?
Yeah.
It's just that's what I was going to say. If you've been in a certain area of life, like I know brothers who, because you talked about the drinking of the water and leaving, yeah. So I know brothers who've done a lot of charity work.
I work on stage.
Yeah, I know you do, but I'm just telling everyone else.
Can I ask talking next?
Yeah. So about Salah, you said the important thing was that I asked a sheikh about how do I pray Salah. I know the physical, the fiqh area of it, but sorry, how do I pray Salah spiritually, like internally? And he said these words to me, and I'm still practicing it. I'm still trying to get there. He said, single-minded devotion and attention. So the attention comes in the fear bit, yeah, and devotion comes in the love bit, yeah. So worship, if you, I think, look at the Oxford Dictionary, you also say adore, worship, adore, love, yeah. So, and then he said, and drive away stray thoughts. And talk about yoga, and these days the NHS has the mindfulness course, and etc. All that. So, and we talk about depression, anxiety linked to fear as well. They also do the same thing. They teach you these exercises. And when we're doing some of those exercises, I felt as if I was reading Salah. Because they, like the Buddhism and Islam, they even quoted Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi there in the course. So single-minded devotion and attention, and drive away stray thoughts. And that bit, the drive away stray thoughts, the way that they did it, similar to us, which is they say that you live moment by moment, and if we knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us moment by moment, we'll be aware. And they say you don't push away thoughts. Like, for example, a sinful thought has come to me. Yeah, I've seen something or I've heard something that is sinful, and I don't push it away, because then it gets stronger. Okay, then it becomes a fight. Yeah, what they say, and the Sufi Akram in Islam say the same thing. They give an example. For example, say it's autumn now, and you're walking down the park, and a leaf falls off the tree. You don't chase after it. Neither do you close your eyes and block it off so if it's not there. You just notice it going past. So if you notice the sin going past, not block it off or notice it, it'll actually pass. Yeah, so you drive away stray thoughts. It's like somebody mentioned a shepherd with his sheep. He doesn't beat them. Yeah, he drives them away from the road, etc. From the wrong road, they're not going to get run over, etc. So to me, with fear and devotion, love, it's like stuck in my mind. This somebody asked, how do you pray namaz? As well, single-minded devotion and
10 seconds.
Drive away straight thoughts.
Yes.
From what this brother mentioned there, the example of the water, wasting the water, etc. So the question would be, does fear, does it increase, decrease? And are there certain degrees to fear as well? As a child, the way they would fear, as an adult, they fear differently, I would say. And not only that, does it increase with knowledge? Does it decrease?
I think it increases with more question.
Vicky, you want to say something? You say what you want to say before the mic, which gets you way back here.
Oh, sorry.
I just have
apologies.
The question was, do we fear Allah? Well, the answer is, simple answer is yes, we do, but not to the extent we should. Not to the extent we should. Here's something about the dunya. I will also answer this brother's question, how do I know somebody else fears Allah? Brother said, if you see a tiger, you get scared and you run away, you fear, you run away. Very something with, when you fear Allah, you don't run away, you get closer to Allah. In the dunya, you feel something, you run away. But with Allah, when you feel Allah, you get closer to Allah. So if you want to know, if somebody feels Allah, somebody's closer to Allah, then know it, that person feels Allah. Guaranteed. So this is the fear, but we should know as much as if we feel Allah, we won't be having the kind of conversation we have with our friends, who just idle talk, who waste our time. None of that. Any of the scholars of Allah, the peace people close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they do none of that. But the most valuable thing we have, and we discussed it last week, is our time. You know, we just waste our time. Brother was asking, we'll ask you a question yesterday about theory. We're discussing about conspiracy theory. If you walk on the street, if you walk on the street, somebody puts a hand in your pocket and steals 20 quid from you. Would you let them steal it? So now hang on, this is my money, what are you doing? This is my money. You won't let them steal it, would you? So why do you let people steal your time then? And either one thing, and you can earn the money, but you can't make the time. Even Bill Gates, with all his money, he's got billions of dollars, he can't get extra time. We all got the same time. So don't waste, don't let them, people, you don't let them steal your money, don't let them waste your time. So the moral is, fear Allah and we're good.
I just basically wanted to say that, do we fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the punishment, or do we actually fear it for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So, you know, I don't know, is that two ways of actually thinking about that fear? Like, I'm not talking everybody, some people actually, you know, as we know that people do whatever they want to do, but people that are actually aware, do they actually only fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the punishment that they're going to receive in the grave and in the judgment day, or in this life as well? Or are they fearing because they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
I'm going to leave that for someone else to answer. I'm going to touch upon what Scoop said, Brother you and Brother Bayas also, and also Azim at the start, which is essentially a central theme of what I think a keyword you used was awareness, or even being present. And you talked about you know, being there in your namaz and your prayer. So I think the central theme, and you talked about how Iman can, you know, some people feel more or less. So I think the central theme is essentially, can we say that fear and belief are linked? And are we actually believing, and therefore there is, you know, there are those who are Muslims who outwardly, you know, do perform the actions that are required by Islam, right? And then there are those who have Iman, who are, you could say, maybe, you know, are mu'mineen, and they have that belief and therefore that fear. And as Iman fluctuates, so does, say, your fear. So I don't know, there's some thoughts, and I guess you guys could probably answer.
Okay, so you know, when we see the definition of fear in terms of English, the language itself, it's got a scale to it. You'll see it in the dictionary. Compare the noun against the verb, and you'll see it start with somebody being scared or have some sort of fear or anxiety or a sense of danger. That's what you'll see. And the final thing is a fear and a reverence for God. It's the final thing in the English dictionary. Now, in Arabic, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. But in Arabic, what you'll see is that every important word has hundreds of words. Hundreds of words. Like the word for love has hundreds of words, and it's got a scale to it. With Arabic, it's the same for fear. There's various words for it, and it's really fascinating. But instead of going into that, because you can do a whole lecture on that, I'll just pick on one thing here, just combining a couple of points that were made. And that is a group of problems. A group of problems. The first problem is this, touching on Mohsin's point, of sort of self-awareness. So individuals nowadays kind of want to live in the shoes of another person, right? They want to be a certain person, and they kind of want to live their lifestyle. So much so that they become almost, to a degree, non-existent about themselves. They don't know themselves. Such that then they can't fear anything. they just fear others, right? At the same time, you have another type of group. That group is the group that's become so desensitized. Touching on Rias's point, when we're small, we might watch a horror film, we come across something, we're terrified. But when we grow up, it's gone. It's gone. Why is that? Probably because we're a bit more mature, we know what it is. Okay, but the other one is that we become so sort of accustomed to seeing these things that we become desensitized from it. That we no longer, when we hear about hell, it doesn't mean anything to us. We don't fear it. And at the same time, there's a group, like the Quran talks about, the Bani Israel. They forgot about themselves so much that even paradise wasn't enough. Even paradise wasn't enough. So there's degrees to it. But throughout the Quran, you'll see it's a balance. It's not just fire and the brimstone. It's not just fire and water. It's fire and water, yes, but to a balanced degree.
Just coming to the point Brother asked me, the knowledge increase in fear? Do we increase in fear through knowledge? And the answer is in the Quran. When Allah says, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says where the scholar, the people that possess knowledge, they're the people that truly fear Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So a reality of knowledge, that you should increase in knowledge. And if you didn't, then it's not knowledge. Okay, so also one of the definitions that Imam Ghazali gives of fearing Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, which is taqwa, we say in Arabic. He says, now we cannot judge ourselves by this. If you ask ourselves, do we actually fear Allah? Ask yourself, how are we actually fulfilling the commandments of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? And how are we abstaining from the prohibition of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? That's the litmus test. And this is, by this you can judge yourself, how are we, because we cannot claim to fear Allah without actually fulfilling this too. From the commandments of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, abstaining from prohibition, as the foremost, that must be done. Then inshallah you go levels. Then you go to levels of ihsan, then ma'arifat, and all the other levels, mashallah. That's the base level. That's what I should fulfill in order to actually acquire the way.
On that bombshell, I must declare that we've run out of time for the discussion, but there are a number of offshoot questions. Inshallah, next week we'll pick one of them or two of them and we'll continue the discussion in the interest of time. What's going to happen now is Alama Saab to my right, he's going to summarise his thoughts on this matter, and then this part of the programme will be ended.
हम जब इस फेर का माना उर्दू में खौफ करते हैं, अरबी ज़बान के अंदर अल्लाह रब्बुल इज़्ज़त के लिए जो अहले ईमान का डरना है, उसको खौफ की बजाय खशियत से ताबीर किया गया है. ये दो डिफरेंट अल्फाज आए हैं. खौफ खतरनाक चीज से डरना जो डेंजरस है.
Sorry, Alama Saab is going to do it in Urdu, as you've seen, and I heard rather. And I know there's plenty of people here who don't understand Urdu, so Haji Saab will translate.
खतरनाक चीज से डरना ये खौफ होता है जो आपको डैमेज कर सकती है, नुकसान दे सकती है. लेकिन एक चीज के साथ आपकी इंतहा दर्जे की मोहब्बत है. मसलन आपकी वालिदा है, वालिदा से भी इंसान डरता है, लेकिन वो खौफ से डरना नहीं होता, वो उसकी नाराजगी से डरना है. क्योंकि माँ इतना प्यार देती है, इतनी मोहब्बत देती है, इतनी शफकत देती है, तो इंसान इसलिए उसकी रिस्पेक्ट करता है और उसको डिसोबे नहीं करता कि कहीं मेरी माँ मुझसे नाराज ना हो जाए. ये डरना और माना में है ये भी उसी तरह, लेकिन इसको खौफ नहीं कहते. इसी तरह अल्लाह रब्बुल इज़्ज़त का जो ताल्लुक है, वो एक माँ तो क्या हजारों माओं से बढ़कर उसकी मोहब्बत है. तो वो जो उससे डरना है, वो इस माना में डरना है कि वो इतना रहीम है, इतना करीम है, इतना उसने इंसान के ऊपर इतनी नेमतें दी हैं. तो जो अहले ईमान होते हैं, इसलिए कुरान ने फरमाया کہ جو علماء ہیں، عالم وہ ہے جس کے دل میں اللہ کا خوف ہے. انما یخشى اللہ من عبادہ العلماء، کہ جس کو اللہ کا جتنا زیادہ علم ہوتا جائے گا اتنا زیادہ اس میں خشیت آتی جائے گی. اور دوسری چیز، ہم جو گناہ کرتے ہیں، انسان نافرمانی اللہ کی کب کرتا ہے؟ حضرت سلیمان بن علی رضی اللہ تعالی عنہ اکابر اولیاء اللہ میں سے ہیں. ان سے کسی نے ریکویسٹ کی کہ آپ مجھے کوئی نصیحت کریں، مجھے کوئی نصیحت کریں. آپ نے 2 جملے ارشاد فرمائے. آپ نے فرمایا، کیا تیرا اس بات پر ایمان ہے کہ اللہ تجھے دیکھ رہا ہے؟ اس نے کہا میرا ایمان ہے کہ اللہ دیکھ رہا ہے. اس نے کہا کہ اگر اس بات پر تیرا یقین ہے، ایمان ہے کہ اللہ دیکھ رہا ہے، پھر کیسے ممکن ہے کہ تو اس کی نافرمانی کرتا ہے؟ اور اگر تیرا ایمان یہ ہے کہ اللہ نہیں دیکھ رہا تو پھر بندہ کافر ہو جائے گا. فرمایا 2 سچویشنز ہوتی ہیں. ایک سچویشن یہ ہے کہ آپ یا تو یہ سمجھتے ہیں کہ اللہ دیکھ رہا ہے، اللہ دیکھ رہا ہے، یا اس سچویشن میں ہیں کہ اللہ نہیں دیکھ رہا. اگر اس سچویشن میں ہیں کہ اللہ دیکھ رہا ہے تو پھر کتنی بڑی جرت ہے کہ وہ دیکھ بھی رہا ہے اور پھر بھی تو اس کی نافرمانی کر رہا ہے. اور اگر تو یہ سمجھتا ہے کہ وہ نہیں دیکھ رہا تو پھر تو بندہ ہی کافر ہو گیا. ان اللہ کان علیکم رقیبا. اور جو مراقبہ کا لفظ آپ سنتے ہیں، مراقبہ کی ہم پریکٹس بھی تھوڑی سی کرتے ہیں. امام غزالی علیہ الرحمہ کا ایک بک لیٹ ہے مراقبہ کے اوپر. مراقبہ باب مفالہ سے ہے. جو صرف جنہوں نے پڑھی ہے، مفالہ کا جو باب ہے یہ من جانبین ہوتا ہے. جیسے آپ کہتے ہیں نا مناظرہ 2 علماء کے درمیان ہوتا ہے، مقابلہ 2 جو پلیئرز ہوتے ہیں اس کے درمیان ہوتا ہے نا. تو مراقبہ کا معنی یہ ہوتا ہے کہ آپ کسی کو دیکھ رہے ہیں اور کوئی آپ کو دیکھ رہا ہے. یس، ریسیپروکل. تو مراقبہ کا معنی یہ ہے، مراقبہ اسی پریکٹس کا نام ہے کہ آپ اللہ کو دیکھ رہے ہیں اور اللہ آپ کو دیکھ رہا ہے. اسی پر مراقبہ کروایا جاتا ہے. اور جب یہ اتنا جلدی یہ تصور ڈیولپ نہیں ہوتا، اس کے لیے بڑی محنت چاہیے ہوتی ہے. پھر وہ وقت آ جاتا ہے کہ انسان یہ سمجھتا ہے کہ ہر وقت مجھے اللہ دیکھ رہا ہے، اور پھر وہ وقت بھی آ جاتا ہے. آپ یہ منہاج السوی کے اندر حدیث پاک ہے، کتاب الایمان کے اندر حضرت حارث رضی اللہ تعالی عنہ آقا نے فرمایا کیف اصبحت یا حارثہ، حارث تو نے صبح کیسے کی ہے؟ فرماتے ہیں ایمان کے ساتھ کی ہے. آپ نے فرمایا ہر چیز کی ایک حقیقت ہوتی ہے، آپ کے ایمان کی حقیقت کیا ہے؟ انہوں نے کہا میرے ایمان کی حقیقت یہ ہے کہ میں اللہ کے عرش کو اپنی آنکھوں سے دیکھ رہا ہوں، اہل جنت کو جنت میں ایک دوسرے سے کلام کرتے ہوئے اور ایک دوسرے کی زیارت کرتے ہوئے دیکھ رہا ہوں، دوزخ کو اپنی آنکھ سے دیکھ رہا ہوں. آقا نے فرمایا ہاں آپ نے ایمان کی حقیقت کو پا لیا. اور فرمایا عرفتا، تو نے ایمان کی معرفت پا لی ہے، فلزم ثلاثہ، 3 مرتبہ فرمایا اس حالت کو لازم کر لو. تو بات یہ ہے کہ یہ اصل ایمان ہے. تو چونکہ ہم جیسے جیسے ایمان سے دور ہوتے جائیں گے ہمارے ذہن سے یہ بات نکلتی جائے گی کہ ہمیں اللہ دیکھ رہا ہے. انسان گناہ کرتا ہی اس وقت ہے جب وہ یہ سمجھتا ہے کہ مجھے کوئی نہیں دیکھ رہا. اور منافق کی بھی یہی پہچان ہوتی ہے کہ وہ دیکھتا ہے کہ بندوں میں سے کوئی نہیں دیکھ رہا تو وہ گناہ کر لیتا ہے. مومن کی یہ پہچان ہوتی ہے کہ اس کے ایمان میں، اس کے مائنڈ میں، اس کے ذہن میں یہ رہتا ہے کہ میرا اللہ مجھے دیکھ رہا ہے. تو یہ جتنا زیادہ آپ کا یہ کانسیپٹ اسٹرانگ ہو جائے گا، بلیو اللہ کے اوپر جتنا زیادہ ہو جائے گا، پھر انسان اس کی نافرمانی نہیں کرے گا.
I sort of lost track halfway through. He's a Hafiz, he's got better memory than me.
Okay, so Imam Sahib said that amongst the many types of fears the Quran talks about, and specifically to the believers, is 2. One's called khawf, and one's called khashya, from khushu', right? And so one is talking about a fear from some sort of danger, right? And the other one is a fear that's not only external, but then it penetrates the internal, right? So it penetrates your limbs, okay? And then he spoke about it being a manifestation and something that's really linked to one's faith and the level of their faith. So he spoke about how a sinner is compared to a believer that has awareness and one who doesn't have much awareness. So the one who has awareness, he will live in a state where he's constantly, knowing that Allah is seeing him, right? That Allah, and also the higher he goes, he can imagine that he is seeing Allah, right? Or that Allah is seeing him. You can actually imagine it. And once your faith is like solid, right, you can get that degree of consciousness, that degree of knowing that Allah is seeing us, and so therefore we can protect ourselves from sinning. And it's very much connected to fear, that element of fear, that we begin to, through our faith, stronger it is, develop that fear, right? And the Shaykh also spoke about various nasiha, advice that the awliya gave, and that it's a thing that's connected to love, a connection of love, awareness, and that all piles up in a word called taqwa, right? Where we begin to protect ourselves. It's not just fear; it's protecting ourselves from danger, from harm. That's what it is. And Allah knows best. But I'll add something of this.